Hey, yo, it's me, Pops Van Marmalade, and you're watching the Comics-Related Madness Network. Uh-huh. So come get some. CromCon.
Hey, we want to shout out to our sponsors, Daytona Beach Comic Con. If you are a fan of comic books, if you're a fan of comic book conventions, and if you like meeting comic book creators and getting comics and comic-related stuff, then you need to make your plans to attend Daytona Beach Comic Con. This year's show is September 9th and 10th. Silverline will be there, so you should make your plans to be there too. We'll see you there. If you like comics and find yourself in the Orlando, Florida area, doesn't everyone come to Orlando at some point in time to see the House of Mouse? But when you're here, you need to make it a point to visit Coliseum of Comics, especially the one on East Colonial Drive. They carry Silverline Comics, even a limited edition Coliseum of Comics version of our comics. So, when you go, be sure to ask for Silverline Comics and tell them we sent you. OCD stands for Orlando Collector Deviants. OCD, Steve and Trish, they're a family of geeks who promote geek things, particularly those around the Orlando, Florida area. They're big supporters of Silverline, and we think you should be supporters of theirs too. Go give them some love. If you are an independent comic book maker and you need to get your independent comics made, you need to look no further than Kablam Digital Printing. They print our books, and they do a bang-up job. They're not only trusted by Silverline, but many, many independent comic book makers. Head on over to kablam.com and see for yourself just how easy it is to have your comic printed by them. And tell them Silverline sent you.
Hi, this is Tim TK, host of That Silverline Show on Tuesday. Join us at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific every Tuesday night as we discuss pop culture and the joys of making comics.
Hi, I'm Barb Kilber, co-host of Silverline's Wednesday Wham. Join us each Wednesday night as we discuss comics, literature, movies, and anything else that may catch our attention.
I'm Roland Mann, and I host Silverline's Silver Sunday. Join me every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern as we make mine Silverline.
Hola, everyone.
Good evening. Wednesday Wham!
Hey, Mike. What day is it?
What?
It's
Mike.
Day.
It's Hump Day. It's a commercial down here in the States, Martin.
I don't watch enough TV. Actually, I don't watch TV at all, so I watch YouTube.
It's a talking camel.
Oh, okay.
Talking camel. And he comes and goes, Mike. He's in an office. Mike. What day is it?
And everyone in the office is going, oh, he's doing it again.
Oh, dear. That's
It's
hilarious.
Wednesday.
It is Wednesday Wham! That's Barb Kalberg up there, the Empress of Inks. Below us, we got Twilight Grim artist Rob Davis, the venerable penciler, who's the two of them are working on a mystery project, which we keep trying to dig out of you guys. We've shown a couple of pictures and stuff, but yeah.
No can do.
And I'm the guy who colors stuff. I color Wolf Hunter. Wolf Hunter 2 is now pages are starting to go up onto the server, so look for that. And it's
cool.
Yeah. And I'm trying to make the colors as exciting as possible, so that you guys have some sort of a visual feast to look at. The art in the second book is absolutely brilliant. Not that the art in the first book wasn't, but it's really well done. Love the style. It's kind of I don't know how to put it. A little more. I don't want to say cartoonish, but it kind of has
Stylized.
It has an animation, I won't say cartoonish, has an animation base,
Okay.
but it's really, really well done. I love it. So it's been fun to color. So, but hey, artists out there, close your gaps.
I just finished page 17 today, coloring Divinity number 4, which leaves me 5 pages to go to finish coloring it up and get it.
Is that the first story arc?
Yeah,
Is
we'll
that
finish off the
completion of
first story arc. Right, in a running series. I'm not going to do like some people choose to do 4-issue minis and then renumber them starting with the next 4 pages. I'm not doing that. I'm just,
That's why
my
I
next
said
issue
it
is
as I
number
did.
5.
As a story arc. So it's just an arc.
Yeah, in a long running story.
Right.
So yes, thank you. I love that cover. Jeff Johnson cover, one of my favorites of all time.
Yep. That one kicks.
Yep.
Yes,
so, ladies
and
and
that's
gentlemen, Silverline Divinity.
That's my
Now,
best-selling cover too.
And it's an award winner.
Oh wow! And so now did this make it to the book the comic book stores? This one?
No, it has not been solicited yet.
Not been solicited yet. So
yeah, and it won't be until I finish number 4.
Right. Okay.
So because they want to.
All right.
Have,
so that'll be sometime this year though.
Yep, and
Probably
number 5 is 2/3 of the way through being penciled.
Nice.
Cool.
And I just done a rough edit on number 6's script. So I'm a busy gal.
Mm-hmm. And how's the secret project going there, Rob? That looks pretty blank to me.
The last couple of weeks have been very, very busy outside the studio for me, so I have not been able to get much done. But there is a page out there that needs to be inked yet, I think.
Yes, I know.
Yeah, there's one out there. So you just finished up the one prior to that, so I'm not feeling too bad about not getting anything done for a little bit.
But,
so ladies and gentlemen,
we both have other things going on. So
yeah,
so ladies and gentlemen,
if you're a week to 10 days starting tomorrow, I'm going back to Iowa.
I should
to see
have
my
another
father.
page, maybe 2 done for you. By the time you get back, fingers crossed.
Yeah. So actually, people, so you know that was actually a finished page. That was polar bear vampires in a snowstorm.
That's right. That's right.
And they hadn't attacked anybody yet because there's no red on there yet.
That's right. That's right.
They're slathered in mayonnaise.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Oh, speaking of which, go ahead.
That wouldn't make it past Fredric.
Now that we've gone completely off the rails.
That's right. That's right. I mean, how many times a show do we do that? Every time.
At least 2. Usually many more.
Tonight we are going. It's seduction and censorship. Seduction as in seduction of the innocent by Fredric Wertham. He wrote a book.
Where do I mute your mic?
Oh yeah,
the censorship aspect. Yeah,
the censorship. Yeah, that's right. In 1953, Fredric Wertham published a book called Seduction of the Innocent, where he claimed, and I admit I'm reading a lot of this off of my notes. He claimed that comic books were evil. They contributed to delinquency and sexual perversion of minors. And their publishers were part of the McCarthy-era communist conspiracy.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
To undermine society.
Just to hold up for a sec, apparently we're not on YouTube. Are we in the right place? Are we streaming in the right place?
Well, we should be. I don't know why we're not on YouTube. That's a question for Roland. You mind if
Are we?
Got some play? Mr. Big.
Mr. Big.
Are we there yet?
Are we there yet? Are we there yet? I want to put some.
Or are we? Or is our topic too hot?
No.
Just check.
I have no idea why that is.
So
that's.
Do we have any comments yet?
Well, we got Mr. Big commenting on our comments.
Okay, so we are going out over the internet. We're just not at YouTube for whatever reason. Okay, that's good. I was
Okay.
concerned we weren't getting anywhere. So
Yep. There's nothing I
Wednesday.
can do about that because that's on Pop's side. So we'll just
yeah, that
we'll
that
just
may
live
be
in
a setting
Pops.
somewhere where that Pops needs to
Can
get
you
to.
help? There we go. All right. All right. Well, we're going to have to forge onward and hope that YouTube catches up.
And
with
hope
us.
that YouTube catches up with us. Yes.
Mhm. So apparently, when Fredric Wertham wrote this book, people were all over it like flies on.
Yes.
Yep.
Supplies on duty, as we say. Yep.
Yes. And there was such an uproar that comics decided that before they could be censored,
we are
they
on
censored
YouTube.
themselves.
It's just delayed.
Oh, it's just delayed. Okay, we're good. They decided to self-censor instead of waiting for the comic code came about because of this book, Mr. Big. And
Comics Code Authority. Yep.
Yep. The Comics Code Authority was started by the companies themselves to self-censor themselves before Congress could do it for them. So they basically cut their own throats. I was going to say something else, but
it was very similar to what the movies did to themselves back in I believe it was the late 20s, early 30s. They came up with a code of their own to that, because there were a lot of really racy films back in the at the end of the talkie or the non-talkies and into the talkie era, and so there were threats, just as there were with comic books, that they were going to shut, they were going to start clamping down with the government, but that they headed them off at the pass with the in the movies. I forget what it was called, but in the comics it was called the Comics Code Authority.
Mr. Biggs got it. The Hays Code. You are good.
Thank you very much. The old gray cells don't always work as well as they used to.
So now, interestingly enough, though, like if reflecting on the Comics Code, lots of stuff still kind of slipped through the cracks. If like you have comic books back in the day where you had people getting blown apart, and so, I mean, it was crazy. Some of the stuff that you got. So I'm just curious as to like how effective it was. And if you go looking, like there's a lot of stuff around the edges that are, like it was all out there, but it may not have had the comic code stamp on it. But did that kind of limit the audience? Or
it did?
Okay,
it did, because distributors colluded with publishers in the Comics Code Authority to eliminate anyone from the distribution system who didn't have that Comics Code Authority label on their books. Now there's at least one company that got away with never putting one on there, and that was I had it for a second. Gold Key. Gold Key.
Gold Key did a lot of children's.
They did a lot of wholesome family
hot
stuff anyway, and they said they didn't need to join that. Gold Key, Casper, and then later on Western company. I forget what it was called. There was two companies.
What about Whitman? Whitman,
EC Comics. EC Comics was the worst offender. They were very much down on EC Comics because they had a lot of graphically violent covers, and they were the biggest. According to Fredric Wertham, they were the greatest
offenders.
Danger.
Yes,
the greatest offenders.
Well, yeah. So,
who was?
So, I don't know
who
what
made
that
all
was.
the confetti fall.
I don't know.
That was
in
weird.
1954, mature content and explicit covers disappeared from mainstream comics for several decades. Korean War comics also reflected the Cold War fear of communism. Romance comics continued to flourish before and after, and because they also presented stereotypical gender roles in the romance comics, so they were allowed to slide by because they were portraying the trad wife.
Nothing explicit.
Right.
Anything was implied rather than explicitly depicted.
So when
now Wertham had hundreds of illustrated examples in his book, and I have a few of them tonight. But first, you go ahead.
So Fredric Wertham is hitting this when, in the 50s or in the 60s?
53.
Or is it
53? Yeah.
53.
Year before I was born.
Okay, so in comics started in what? The start
40s.
Well, I guess you get
39.
The 1920s.
No,
the Super
comic strips
started in 39. The comic strips were collected together before that in the late 20s.
Right. Okay, so you've got like this 30-year window, like from let's say the 1920s into the 1950s, where comics went.
It was the wild west of comics.
Yeah. Right. So the comics went into pretty raunchy territory pretty quick then. Yeah.
There's a good example. Yeah.
Everything I'm showing you was presented in Wertham's book as an example of corrupting the youth of yesterday,
right?
With either sex, violence, don't say rock and roll, or even examples of how to become a juvenile delinquent. And and the sex also included lesbian and gay themes that he saw. Doesn't necessarily mean anybody else saw. But
I think it said more about him than anything else. But yeah.
he said that Batman and Robin were very homosexual in bent. He also claimed that Wonder Woman's strength and independence made her a lesbian.
Now, I don't know about that on Wonder Woman, but reading the history of Wonder Woman and Masterson is
William Moulton Marston. Yeah, he wasn't too far off the mark about that, but that didn't come out until later.
But if you read the Wonder Woman stuff, there was a lot of bondage stuff going on, which was kind of like, and then he ended up being married to two women at the same time, and he was a pretty whacked out guy.
But he
also invented the lie detector.
Lie detector, yes.
Of all things. So the guy who made Wonder Woman invented the lie detector, but then the lie detector has been.
And her lasso was a lie detector. So yeah.
Right. So yeah. So there's some peculiarities in the early Wonder Woman stuff that's kind of like.
Yeah.
Makes you scratch your head. Yeah. So anyways.
Yeah, there were some scenes with Batman and Robin. Or Bruce and Dick in bed together. Yeah, Dick Grayson in bed together.
Okay.
That were in the book. Really? And I'm going, yeah, okay. Since they weren't, that was quote unquote evidence that they were gay. Or engaging in a gay lifestyle.
Okay.
The funny thing is, he was seeing, and I don't know how this is possible, but he was, and I'm quoting here off the page here. He also claimed that there were concealed drawings in the comics of female nudes, and in the comics industry, concealed, like they were subtextual. In the drawings, and of course the comics industry is like, you are off your rocker, but he swears that he could see it. Well, he could see it, but I don't know who else could see it.
I'm thinking
it says more about him than
it did about comics.
Concealed.
So that he essentially, like I said while we were in the green room, he came in with a theory about what things were and looked only for evidence that led to his theory. That's not the scientific method whatsoever. preconceived
pre-approved
notion of what.
agenda. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he made the evidence fit his theory instead of the other
Yes.
way around.
Yeah. Exactly.
And that's been proven since. But he certainly had a big impact on the time. Do you consider this cover for now? Remember, this is the early 50s. Do you consider this cover to be too much for the early 50s?
No.
I think it's too much for now. But
well,
that's like grim, man. That's
this is one of the ones that he had
like
in his.
Yeah. So I don't know.
How about this one?
This to me is like this was
I have one that's even worse. How about
yeah.
Oh,
I don't doubt it. Oh, that's awful. Bugs Bunny.
It is.
Okay, what's the issue with this?
It's that he was stealing.
That he was stealing. Oh.
Mm-hmm. The diamonds, you see, and that was giving kids a wrong message. That theft was okay.
So
yeah, carrots. I think the joke here is carrots.
Okay.
Obviously he did not get it.
Carrots. Yeah, he didn't get it. Obviously.
So just the cover. He's supposedly stealing the diamonds, or does he actually steal diamonds in the book?
I don't know, because I'd have to read the entire Wertham book, and I have not. I did the Cliff Notes.
All right.
Yeah, I don't know either.
But
I've
this
never read the book either.
This was an example of one of that he had in his book. One of the covers he had in his book.
Okay.
Yeah.
And okay.
This is another EC cover.
Yeah.
So obviously this is a little violent, and it shows violence towards women. So I mean, EC did have a little bit of a reputation for being out there and risque, but I think he was.
Yeah, I think part of the biggest problem I have with his whole thing is that comics were only for kids. That was one of the things he went in with, and these are books written and created for adults to read.
Correct.
Adults also read comics, and that's what he did not get, is that these were, and kids wouldn't pick up a cover like that. That's too freaky for them. They wouldn't be looking at that stuff. So yeah.
Well, and he's of the prevalent mindset that we find today, where the public needs to police our children for us, instead of having the children being policed by their own parents. He felt that society needed to police our children for us. So yeah, that's a big one today too. Okay, I got another one here. Again, we have sex and violence, because we've got a sexy gal.
And her clothes are ripped. Yes.
Yep. Her clothes are being ripped off. Oh my goodness. Bodice ripper.
That's actually pretty tame by today's standards. You know, we see a lot more flesh and a lot more lurid stuff on covers these days. Of course, the Comics Code Authority is long gone.
Oh yeah.
Is it gone now? Did they turfed it? Okay.
Yeah, it pretty much went away.
Okay.
It just kind of dissolved and was no more.
Now here's an interesting tidbit that I did not know before. I knew that the book opened up an avenue for this to go before Congress, a congressional hearing. It caught the attention of Kefauver. That's right, Kefauver. Senator Estes Kefauver. I'm impressed, Rob. He had a reputation as a mob. He had a reputation as a mob hunter. And it was a known fact. It wasn't known to me, but it was a known fact that the mob had strong connections with the distribution of comics and magazines.
Yeah.
Did not know that.
Well, here's the thing. Many of the early comics publishers printed rather lurid and near pornographic stuff before they started printing comics. they found there was even more money in comic books than there was in that lurid stuff. So that's why they went to that. But it was a lot tamer than what they were doing before. So there were some underworld types involved in that stuff, and they worked their way into the comic book world as well. So
yeah, see, that was new to me. The senator, what'd you say? Kefauver.
Kefauver, yeah.
He took his message to the subcommittee on juvenile delinquency, and in testimony before the committee, he compared comic books to Adolf Hitler.
Of course he did.
Compared comic books to Adolf Hitler. Oh
Yes,
my goodness.
He did.
Wow.
Yep.
Yeah.
Boy. Wow.
Yeah, that's what I think too.
Oh boy.
So obviously he has him, the senator, and Mr. Wertham has whipped the public into a frenzy at this point, and there were book burnings. Oh, and a rope that is just like too violent for anybody to see. Nowadays, this would make anybody laugh at this being too violent. But this is one of the covers that was shown, as was Blue Beetle. Oh, sex.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Why doesn't her bra strap go around to the back?
Yeah,
side?
Exactly. I'm going, what happened to her bra strap?
It's right there.
That's just
Where's the
somebody
rest of
making
it?
a mistake. Yeah. So, yeah, all right.
Okay. Do you see a problem with this? How about that one? This was actually in the book as being showing infidelity or premarital sex.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
So for a night of love.
Is that man's hair really long? Okay, I guess that was like from the medieval times or something, or
Regency period,
Renaissance.
somewhere around that.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is around Marie Antoinette's time. This story took place anyway.
Oh,
but
okay.
even the title, For a Night of Love, just the sheer title alone, gives off the idea that it's a one-night stand, which is a big no-no. And they're already an illicit affair.
Having a preconceived notion and finding evidence for that notion.
So now, did he go after the pulp books as well at the same time, or did he just go after comics?
Pulps were pretty dead by then. There were the men's magazine. Yeah, the men's it had morphed into men's magazines. Were actually much worse than the comics were with some of the covers.
Right.
I mean, you've seen Weasels Rip My Flesh, and some of that stuff was even wilder than that. But that wasn't. Comic books were for kids. The men's books were for adults. So even though they were in the same dime store, probably in a spinner rack right next to the comics. So yeah, I don't know why they left those alone, but they did.
Yeah. So interesting enough, my immediate perception for this comic would be definitely targeted to an older audience.
Exactly.
So
well, not only the pulps were also thought of as more of an adult because they were books.
Yeah.
Whereas comics were picture
prose.
books, funny picture books, and they were supposedly meant for children. Well, obviously, we can see that they were not meant just for children. But apparently, that's what the whole Wertham perspective was that they were all meant for children, and this is what we were feeding the children.
Yeah.
Crime.
But of course.
Oh, yeah, art feeling. So anyway, the hearing kicked off in front of Congress, and by summer, 15 publishers went out of business. At EC Comics, only Mad Magazine survived. So it effectively put EC out of business.
Yeah,
Because it turned from a comic to a slick magazine, even though it was still illustrated like comics were.
Teenage
so it seemed to be the Wertham's thing seemed to be going after EC Comics specifically, because it was like any comic with the following words on the cover are not allowed: murder, shock, suspense, or I'm not sure if suspense, but
Suspense,
like almost
suspense
anything
was
with those.
allowed. Yeah.
Yeah, but almost anything that was kind of like certain words were like banned from being on the cover of a comic. So
I think crime even was banned from a cover. So he called a lot of them were called crime comics. So yeah, like this one would be. This would be an example of that. Teenage Dope Slaves is it's a crime magazine. And yeah, just crazy stuff. Oh,
I don't
Kid
need
Milton.
nobody. I'd stick a shiv in my best friend's back if it would get me an easy buck. Friendship is for suckers. Loyalty, that's for jerks. Yeah, I can see why he went after this one, but still, I mean, it's not meant to be a kid's comic. Again.
The guy's name is Kid Melton.
Yeah, exactly.
Kid. Yeah. All right. Interesting.
Wertham also opined that comic books taught children how to misbehave. Boy, my kids learned that all on their own. I hate to say this.
Yeah.
They didn't need comic. I was a comic book artist, and they never read comics. My own kids did not read comics because I guess they were immune because they were all over the place here. He claimed that lurid images of violence, crime, and sexual perversion could hijack a child's imagination, indoctrinating and conditioning children to imitate the depraved panels that they saw. Martin.
Yeah.
Daddy Martin. What's your opinion on this?
On this?
He claimed that this showed people how to do break-ins. Yeah, it showed kids how to break into houses, even though the illustration is how to close a window from the outside. Apparently, it's a diagram for housebreakers. You're looking at it? It's instructions.
I zoomed in on it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a diagram to locking a door from the window from the outside. So obviously this is not breaking and entering.
Yeah,
this is
but
leaving and going. Fixing and leaving. But he says it's a diagram for housebreakers.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. I'm on the fence on that one. That's yeah.
Does it say what that's from? Is that from a comic book?
It's from a comic book.
It had to be. Huh.
Yep.
Interesting. All right.
So here's another one. I can obviously see that this one might be a little risque. Not any more risque than the 90s gals that we had.
Oh my word.
Which wore butt floss all the time. Or as my mother used to say, 2 bandages and a cork.
Yeah. Not far off.
So yeah, this was a big one that he had issues with. I am going here's another one.
Yeah, that one I have a little trouble with that one.
I do too.
Even for adults, that's a little much.
Yeah.
A lot of these are crime.
The first one
Again,
where the head was chopped off by an axe, I thought was a little bit much. So,
yeah.
I'm just like, yeah. So, okay,
another
now
crime story.
That's it. Is his head getting blown off?
Yes.
Oh yeah, look up there.
That's a little much too. Yeah.
Yeah, but
I
these
mean- I
are
mean-
not children's books. These are
Yeah. Well, that's
Yeah,
the whole
true
point.
crime
Yeah.
stories.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh.
And they were never meant to be children's books, but he said that they got into children's hands anyway.
Now, as odd as it's going to sound, that's a spectacular art. It's really
Yeah, it's
well done.
drawn.
It's
Yeah,
very
it's
well
beautifully
done.
drawn, but it's a
It's
gruesome
very
subject.
yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, and that's a little too graphic.
They su-
A photo cover.
They
Yeah.
succumbed to temptation. This is the story of youth gone wrong and the penalties hundreds of pretty girls have to pay when they allow themselves to fall victim to unscrupulous men. Oh, the punishment they have to pay for allowing themselves. Get that? I love that. For allowing themselves to fall victim to unscrupulous men, because it's all the woman's fault. Their own wayward emotions and the other hidden pitfalls of sensation-crazed society. I don't know about you guys, but I've never allowed myself just to fall victim because I wanted to be a victim. I don't know. But yeah, that's another one.
Yeah. So, interestingly enough, I looked up this For Night of Love on my comic book resource. And I flipped through some of the stories, and in a sense, it's more of like, why would you? The people who are portrayed in the book is like, why would you ever want to be like this? Is more how the comic comes across.
Yeah, exactly.
So the first story in that book is a lady who said this man was man is in love with her, and he comes to visit her, and then he sees a man dead on the ground behind us is her sofa, and she says, he was my lover and he fell over and he hit his head and now he's dead. Can you dispose of the body for me, and then you can come back? And you're like, oh my goodness, what is going on? This is insane. It's like, but then the rest of the stories that are in that book, they're all about like completely selfish, self-absorbed, like, it'd be more of a warning than anything else. Like, don't be like these people.
In what we're talking about, we're not defending these particular books.
Yeah.
There were some
No.
There were some offensive books out there.
Yeah.
But they were for adults. They were for kids.
Yeah. But reading it, you just kind of like, there's no way you'd want to be these people, or you'd want to emulate them in any way, shape, or form. I think they were more kind of like, yeah, no, stay away from this. So, reformed schoolgirl.
Yes, reformed schoolgirl who allowed herself to be taken advantage of. I'm going to read you a quote now from Harry Mendricks. He did a study on the book, Fredric Wertham's Seduction of the Innocent, and what of all the stuff that he had to say for it, had a really good article on it. This I picked out as being the most significant. He says, I'd also understood from secondhand sources that Wertham really did not have scientific evidence to back up his claims about the link between comic books and juvenile delinquency. But the whole idea of reading this book was to allow Wertham to, in effect, plead his own case. I knew that Seduction of the Innocent was written for the general public, but I still expected a well-ordered and reasoned presentation. Instead, I found it filled with histrionics, and that Wertham's train of thought seemed to wander erratically. There was an overall structure provided by the chapters, but within a paragraph, it could frequently seem like a stream of consciousness. So apparently, Wertham was not very good at setting out his arguments in a meaningful way.
He was not a scientist. He didn't do it properly. As I understand it, he asked all juvenile delinquents whether they read comic books. That was his proof that comic books caused juvenile delinquency, because all juvenile delinquents read comics. Now, if he'd gone around the general public, asked adults and other kids if they read comics, he'd have gotten the same answer. But he only went to juvenile delinquents and asked them. So
Kind of a restricted pool of evidence.
yeah,
there.
it's not the scientific method whatsoever. Wow, Brenda Starr. I'm surprised that's. Of course, that is kind of a racy cover.
Well, Brenda Starr, if I remember correctly, also had they did some nude stuff in the actual strip too. I think
nothing explicit, but yeah, it was suggested, and yeah.
Yeah, so it was a little bit more of an edgy. But
Risque.
no, interestingly enough, in like I don't know about North American comics, but like Modesty Blaze over in Europe, like in the comic strip that they would run in the paper, they would have, full blown changing shots where she'd be taking off her clothes and be topless in the whole 9 yards. So which is kind of
Mr. Big,
interesting.
you're right. Yes, so it is up to mom and dad to oversee the kids.
Yep.
Yeah, my kids always complained that we were way too strict, and now that their parents are going, "Oh, how did you do this? How did you do that?
How did
you did such a good
see this?
Yeah, you did such a good job with this." I'm like, "You didn't think so at the time."
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, that's another. There's quite a bit of strangling being done in the books that he pointed out. Is that underwater too? Is that bubbles coming up?
It looks like it. Yeah.
Looks like underwater.
Maybe it's underwater.
So
yeah, because I see the seaweed in the background. Yeah.
So I'm going to make a suggestion. I think Fredric Wertham had a point, but I think the way he went about making his point might have been a little bit overblown. So,
well, I think he was like other like McCarthy during the same period. He was going for the fame and the money involved with pointing the finger like that. That worked really well to get headlines for you.
Also, post-war society was primed for this sort of thing.
Yeah,
they were seeing enemy spies everywhere and evil around every corner because they just come out of a world war, and they were still. Here's a good analogy. If I start talking about ticks, you're going to start itching, right? So,
or you have the phantom tick crawling up your leg, yeah.
Right. And that was the way that the post-war was. It was the phantom tick crawling up your leg. Everybody was feeling gitchy about enemies on our land or in the United States and influences on our children. And they all collectively went apeshit, basically.
Yeah, we have some of that going on today, even.
It's cyclical.
It's
very cyclical.
It never goes completely away. It comes back in cycles, yes. There's our girl.
Yeah. There's
Wonder Woman.
Apparently our lesbian, because she's strong-willed and authoritative, so she must be one, right? That's what Wertham said anyway.
Yeah, except she was always chasing what's his name?
Yeah, well, apparently that didn't count. He just brushed that under the rug. Steve was his name?
Yeah,
Steve Trevor.
Steve Trevor. There you go, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Who are 4 and 7? I don't know what that means.
Oh,
is that the kids? The kids are 4 and 7.
Mr. Big's kids. My grandkids are 3 and 5, and trust me, I'm like looking at them now and going,
2 and 6 months. So yeah.
What? You guys are having trouble? No. Well, you won't listen to me how I would resolve it, so I guess you're gonna have trouble.
Yeah, I just sugar them up and send them home.
Well, and that brings up another thing. It's like I, as an adult, number one, would never buy comics like that for my children.
Kids? Yeah.
Number two, if I had them in my home, I wouldn't have them in a place where kids could read them. So how it,
Yeah, how it was the comic book company's fault that this was going on, and that it was causing these things when parents could and should have been intervening at this point. But it got everyone in a lather, especially almost everyone who had never read a comic book got into a lather about it. So suddenly, funny books, as my parents used to call them, were evil. They caused juvenile delinquency. And oh my gosh, juvenile delinquency was a horrible thing back in the 50s.
oh
Even
yeah,
though you really couldn't define what it was.
Pony Boy.
Yep. Mind control, MK Ultra. Okay.
I know there was a lot of silly theories running around, like
Fluoridation in the water, and that was a communist plan.
Area 51.
Yeah, there's a lot of weird stuff going. Well, and there's weird conspiracy theories today too. So it's
human nature.
It comes back. It goes through cycles.
It's very cyclical. Yep. Do we self-censor ourselves now?
Well,
yeah.
Well, that's
when I'm doing a mainstream comic book. Yeah.
Well,
now, I did Scimitar, which was back in the 80s, which was very racy, and in fact was in a couple of issues was explicit. So, but in the stuff that I do for mainstream comic books, I self-censor.
And I inked some stories for Xenophile, which was a triple X-rated comic.
Right. Yep. Okay. So now I'm gonna ask a question about self-censorship.
Well, number one, it's not censorship when you do it yourself.
Well, yeah. Well, so that's kind of what I'm getting at. Is like, okay. Well, is it that you're really so when you're presenting certain types of content, is it really that you're self-censoring if you decide that you're going to I'm going to make this, I'm going to make this way instead of that way? Is it really, or are you actually just meeting the demands of the audience and the demands that are required of you from your publisher, right? So I mean, like if Silverline asks us to produce a certain type of book, you're not going to stick certain things in the book because that's not required of you, right? So you're not really censoring yourself,
right?
Well, okay. So, now I have. Go ahead. I have a counter.
Yeah. So, but let's say now there's where you decide that you want to go into a different territory in a different space, and you decide that you want to produce certain things. Now you could decide that you want to take something to one extreme or to another extreme, and then you might decide like, you know what, I don't think I want to push it that far. I don't want to take it to this place. I'm going to go over here instead. That might be a form of self-censorship. So I don't like self-censorship is a weird paradigm. So go ahead, Barb. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's self-censorship when you are afraid to be canceled.
Okay.
You have an idea that you would like to do, but if you put it out there, you are going to have the wrath of a ton of people come down on you. And are you prepared to handle that? Right. I'm not talking about myself, okay? Because I have my own book, and I know exactly how far I want to push it. I want to keep it equivalent to what you see on nighttime TV.
You're aiming at a certain audience,
right? But
that's the difference.
Say you have a controversial subject that you want to. Are you prepared to throw it out there and get canceled, or are you going to censor and go a safer route?
Okay, so you took that into a slightly different direction than I was expecting, because I was thinking specifically in like the explicit content kind of approach. but you've brought up a very interesting point, which is maybe it could be political, or it could be social, or it could be just a topic that is controversial in general. So
Sure, there's
now,
there's plenty of taboos out there,
Yeah.
social taboos, incest,
Right.
bestiality, stuff like that.
right?
Are you want to go in those waters, or are you going to
Yeah.
censor yourself?
Well, if those are things that you don't,
I think that
you
gets
don't
into the
even
area of illegalities that
Well-
I don't want to get thrown in jail.
right. Well,
I think
so
it's-
but the other
yeah,
side of it is, if
because-
those are not even topics that you touch in a general way, I mean, like, not doing them is that censorship, or is that just like it's not stuff
Common
you do,
sense.
So
It's just not
now,
done.
now, if you're a person who's into that kind of stuff, like, God help you, but if you decide that you're going to not do it,
There-
so self-censorship,
There
then
are
like,
limits to
I don't
free
know, that's-
speech.
yeah.
There are limits to free speech.
So, yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's against some of the things that Barb mentioned earlier are against the law. So
Yeah.
no,
not going there is more or less self-preservation. If you
Right.
don't
So
wanna go to
what if
jail.
you, all right, so where's the line? What if you wanted to show violence towards women?
If
Yeah,
there's-
right.
It's
So-
not
and
illegal.
here's the thing: if there are no consequences from it in the comic book, if it's just shown as violence against women, and that the person who commits that violence has no consequences about those actions, that I have trouble with. I don't want to go there. Now, if in fact, I actually drawn a comic book that has that very thing to it. A woman is ravaged and or killed nastily, but the bad guy, the guy that perpetrated it, pays the consequences before the end of the book. That I had no problem with, as long as we see that the bad guy doesn't get away with it. I have no problem with it. It's when it's just shown for titillation and that sort of thing that I have a problem with it.
How about anti-Semitism or anti-LGBTQ?
And those are all things that are out there. And again, there have to be consequences for it. I don't think there's a problem with depicting it. I think there's a problem if it's depicted without any consequences for those actions.
See, that's your own personal opinion, and that, by the way,
Yes,
that's
and it is.
my opinion as well.
That is
But
my personal opinion.
there's a lot of people out there that wouldn't have your morals, and they would do it anyway,
True.
without consequences. And if they're willing to do it, there's no saying that they can't do it, except
In
for the
fact,
fact that they're going to have to put up with
being
their
canceled.
readers or their peers canceling them.
Yep. Yeah.
So
they get the consequences instead of the bad guy. Yeah.
Well, so yeah, so then you get into
Thanks, Mr. Big.
This is now starting to veer into interesting territory, which could take weeks.
Yeah,
Because
well, this discussion could go on for hours.
you can
yeah.
get into subjective morality, objective morality, then the philosophy and the whole nine yards.
well, Martin, you have
and-
your next topic for your next show.
Yeah. Yeah. And then like
Yeah, now we're getting into we're getting into the First Amendment area,
uh,
where you can do those things as long as it doesn't depict something that's illegal. You can depict it, but in my personal view is that I would not do it if there are no consequences for the person perpetrating the problem.
I want to.
But isn't canceling a form of censorship?
Yes, it is. Absolutely. And I think wokeism has taken things to an extreme.
Well,
so in a weird way, that's a strange form of puritanicalism but in a different way.
Yes, but I think it depends on how you talk about censorship. True censorship is done by a government.
Right.
Otherwise, it's essentially a boycott.
Right.
Backlash.
Which is a whole different thing.
Right. So and this is where the free market I think is a good thing, because you produce the thing, and if people don't buy it, they don't buy it, and if people do buy it, they do buy it, and so but you gotta allow the ideas to exist, and let the ideas fight with each other without getting to the point of violence.
Suffer the consequences of
right.
If they cross the line into illegality, then they could go to jail for it. If
right.
Convicted and go to jail. If it's something that offends the sensibilities of a large part of the populace, they're going to react to it, which is kind of what Wertham was working on. Is getting people roused up about, and he trumped up a lot of his evidence.
Yeah.
But that's what he was attempting to do, was get people roused up about it and to do something about it. And
his book was the earliest form of canceling.
Yes,
in a sense, yeah,
mm-hmm. Of a sort, yeah, well, absolutely.
So now I want to bring this idea of the violence thing against women to a more lighthearted place in a way.
Well, I don't know if violence against women is ever lighthearted, but especially to the woman.
You'll see where I'm going with this in a second. Just give me so because this brought up a very interesting notion. Like, so what about superhero books?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So you end up having like superheroes where they end up fighting with each other, and then you have the men like pounding the men superheroes pounding the women superheroes, and vice versa. And like, are there consequences? Like, it's just kind of like now depending on some of the books, like DC, and I'm not sure exactly when, but in the might have been in the like 2010s era. They went into a very dark place. They went to a very strange, dark place, and there were consequences, but they were highly negative consequences, and a lot of them were highly negative consequences for female characters. And that was a very peculiar thing. I am referring to a specific storyline, but I'm not going to get into it because I just don't think it's
3 minutes till the end of the show.
You don't want to promote it in any case.
No. So, but in general, like comic book, the comic book oeuvre, like, X-Men, or like, maybe something like Image's books, like Wildcats. You had guys and girl characters all pounding on each other, throwing each other through walls, and the whole 9 yards. And it was kind of like, well, okay, but
World Wrestling Federation.
In a strange way, that's really what it was. Basically what it boiled down to. It was like, well, okay, there's superheroes that are pounding on each other, and like, you didn't think anything beyond that, like, or at least I don't. Maybe other people see something else. Like, for some reason, you just see it as
it's very
an
similar
idea
to
beating up another idea. So yeah, I'm not sure. So what are your thoughts on that? Like, is it?
It's a morass I'm not willing to get into.
Well, I'm gonna run this just a little bit different direction.
Yeah.
Let's go into Warner Brothers cartoons.
Sure.
And Tom and Jerry.
Yeah.
And that kind of stuff. Where the cat
Road
was
Runner
pounding on
and
the
the
mouse,
Anvil.
and the Roadrunner and the Coyote, and all of that. It's cartoon violence. I watched all that stuff as a little kid,
didn't turn me
and
into an
none of it
ex-murderer.
made me violent.
No.
So, and it didn't make me into a juvenile delinquent. I did that all on my own.
I watched all those shows. I love.
What are you admitting to here, Rob?
I did that all on my own. No, it didn't do any of that. It didn't make me a violent human being. I knew it wasn't real.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of the same thing with comic books. We're talking about a universe in which a guy is his pectoral muscles are this freaking big,
Mhm.
and they're not real.
Mhm.
So they're in a
You're allowed
different
to
universe than
yeah,
we are. It's not
suspension of
it's
disbelief.
not the
Yeah.
same.
Right.
That's my take. That's
Yeah.
my take on it.
So there's a certain place where the line gets drawn, right? Like where you go,
Right.
okay, in this space, because of what the tropes and all the stuff that comes with
Right.
it and everything else, like you perceive it this way, and then if you do other stuff in this space, then you perceive it in a different
Yeah.
way,
And
then
I
you
can
have
see how someone who isn't aware of those tropes
right,
could come into this and see it and go, "What the are
Right.
they doing here?"
Yeah.
But but within that world itself, that
Yep.
it has its rules. It has its
Yep.
the universe has its physics,
Yep.
and that's if you go into it realizing that, you see it a certain way. If you go into it without knowing those rules or those physics, it's gonna look quite a bit different to you. But you need to realize it's a totally different universe. It's like the Wile E. Coyote and the Roadrunner. That's a universe. Tom and Jerry. That's a universe where you get hit with a hammer and the stars fly off.
Yep.
That's and you go, whoa, ouch, and then you come back a second later, your toes aren't broken, there's no blood, there's none of that stuff. So it's a different universe.
So I was just going to touch on the idea.
Soapbox down.
But before, I was just going to touch on the idea of self-censorship on controversial topics, I think whichever side of a certain topic you land on. So I'm not taking a side on this. I'm just trying to say, whatever side of the topic you land on, if you decide that if something that you believe is true, stand on your truth, right? Throw the idea out there, and if it cancels you, so be it. But if you believe in it, you're going to stand and fight for it. So whatever way you go, make sure that you know,
as long as it's legal.
Now, right? Yes, but so now that said, bashing people over the head with something is not necessarily the right way to go
That's
about
not
something.
legal. That's assault.
So,
assault with possibly a deadly weapon. So
yeah, so I'm going to roll up my comic and bash you.
And that's okay. I have no problem with that.
I specifically brought up the self-censorship and the more illegal aspects that we talked about earlier was like, because I did have a friend who went weird and did put out some very offensive material.
But offensive according to who? And according
the
to
law,
what?
for one.
Well,
okay.
It's like the Supreme Court said. It's like what pornography is. I know it when I see it. What a great definition.
He ruined his life.
He ruined his life. He paid the consequences.
He paid the consequences. He was shunned. He ruined his life, and
I think I know who you're talking about. We won't name that person. So,
but in that case, he needed some self-censorship, and he didn't practice it.
Yeah, yeah. He went somewhere he shouldn't have gone.
No, that's right.
And he paid the consequences for it. So that's the bottom line. Is you got to be willing to pay the consequences if you want to go there. That's like Lenny Bruce as a blue performer in the comedic realm.
Never liked him.
He paid the price. He used He used 4-letter words in his comedy routines, and he was arrested and thrown in jail many times. Now, if you go to almost any comedy demonstration in a theater these days, every single one of them
second nature.
At least one 4-letter word, if not a host of them. So
it's a Floramonte flyby.
Whoosh.
Well, you're our favorite too, Tommy.
You're our favorite flyby.
Favorite flyby, yeah.
Yeah, you're our favorite frequent flyer. He's our favorite frequent flyer.
But yeah,
all right.
yeah, that's like Lenny Bruce. He stood on what he wanted, and he paid the price. He paid the consequences.
In certain respects, you should self-censor judiciously.
You should set boundaries on what you're willing to do. I put boundaries on what I'm willing to do.
Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, it comes down to what audience do I want to reach, and I will put out what I think that audience wants to see. And number one, it has to entertain me. If it doesn't entertain me, I'm not the least bit interested in it. But number two, it has to entertain the people that I'm trying to reach with it. Mm-hmm. And so there are boundaries to that. The people that I want to see this don't want to see that. They want to see this. So yeah, that's if you call that self-censorship, then so be it.
And with those wise words, we are going to wrap it up for the evening.
And we will censor ourselves for the night.
That's right. Thank you for joining us.
I don't have opinions. I've given them out tonight.
Yep. Thank you for joining us tonight. And we've opened up a can of worms that I'm hoping that Martin can get some ideas for future podcasts.
Yeah, let's do this again. Yeah.
Oh, dear.
You're always asking for ideas. I've got the guests. You've got you need the ideas. For those of you out there who
give it some thought. Give it some thought.
2 weeks from now.
Yeah.
2 weeks from now on May 1st, is it? The Wednesday, I will be having Dennis Cowan as a guest. So please join us then.
I might not be here, but I would love to be here. I'm hoping I can.
So Dennis Cowan is a legend, people. So be here.
Yes, I love his work.
Absolutely.
Really, I would love. I'll just sit here and listen. Yeah, excellent. I would. Yeah, I'm happy you're bringing them on.
Oh, thank you.
Very happy you're bringing them on.
All right, as we like to say here in Silverland, make mine
Silverline.
Oh wait, I gotta get the.
Hi, my name is Paul Kupperberg. Make mine Silverline.